Audio is on. And let's do the picture and fade. All right. We're live.
Ready? Go?
Yep, we are good.
Hi, folks. Welcome to our Saturday live YouTube workshop in support of our Purple Heart program, where we spend 2 hours giving you as much information as you can stand, always with a theme in mind. Tonight we're doing the second part, the last part of our...
Just a second, Jake. You're frozen. I lost the link again. I can still hear you.
Technical difficulties.
Every week.
Second part of our designing a hall table. The purpose of this is just to give you a little bit of insight into how to design a piece of furniture. We chose a hall table. Hopefully we're going to come up with some ways of making it unique so it's not just another hall table. Tell me when we're effective and ready.
Nope. Oh, there we go.
We are good now?
Yep.
That doesn't instill a faith, the fact that you give that a little whack and we're back on, but...
I didn't give it a whack.
No.
It's new camera.
New camera, trying to work out all the bugs. So the way the format works tonight is you ask your questions. We'll answer as many as we can. There's a lot that have already been sent in ahead of time. Megan is behind Jake. She's watching. So if you are a combat wounded vet that has been in our program, you've been to one of our classes as our guest, if you will say hello in the chat, hashtag, no, pardon me, not hashtag. At sign, yep. At Megan. She'll see that and we can give you a shout out. Always love to say hello to you guys. Special thank you to Moose tonight. We'll have a big announcement a little bit later on. He's here with us. Jake's behind the camera. Frick is behind the
production desk.
And I'm here. Have we got any questions to get started or underway? Carry over from last week, 2 weeks ago? Have you got them?
Not open right now.
Okay.
Give me a second.
So Ken's at home. Ken's monitoring on online. Luther's there. Super Dave, I presume, is as well. So that's it. We'll do some other little announcements. By the way, you can also donate. This is in support of our Purple Heart Project. I'll give you a quick update. So tentatively, the 4 Atlantic provinces in Canada. Now, the interesting thing about it is we have the largest military training base in the Commonwealth. It's based Gagetown. And we have struggled to get any military combat wounded vets to apply to our program up until now. And since Tony stepped on, Tony Prahador, who was one of the, he actually works with us now. He's a combat wounded vet, retired from the military, medically retired 2 weeks ago. Tony got accepted into our program and decided to do something about it locally to help us. And as a result, there have been lots. In fact, we've had more qualified applicants come in the last couple of weeks in lieu of this class we're going to teach in May than we've had in the last 4 years. That's impressive. Excuse me. Anyway, so last week of May, which is the 23rd to the 29th, we are planning our first Purple Heart workshop that we've had in a year and a half. In order to come to it, you have to be, if you're on the military side, to apply, you have to be combat wounded. That means you have to have sustained either a physical or mental wound in a combat zone. And if that fits you, then you go onto our website, RobCosman.com. In the top left-hand corner under PHP, drop down that menu, and you'll see the application form. Please fill it out, and we'll be in touch. If you would like one of the 7 civilian spots, there's 1 definitely gone, possibly 2 others. Total of 7 available.
Lost it again.
Where are we now?
I don't know what's wrong.
This is old equipment. That's not new.
Yeah, this is what usually works.
Do we have audio?
Yeah, we have audio.
Okay, well, I'll just keep talking while you guys try to figure it out. So if you are interested in woodwork, or if you'd like to be part of this, obviously you'd want to be interested in woodwork. This is a 6-day class. We start the class around 7 in the morning. We go to 11 at night for 6 days. We feed you, so all of your meals are included in the tuition, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It'll be in our brand new facility, great benches, great lighting, great everything. It's going to be an awesome experience. You'll learn everything you can imagine about hand tools, from knowing how to sharpen freehand, chisels, planes, even saws, to how to plane a rough piece of lumber from rough to finished, meaning no sandpaper required. You'll learn how to cut mortise and tenon joints, dovetails. You'll learn essentially how to the techniques required in order to build a piece of furniture with just hand tools. And when I say just hand tools, I mean there is no power equipment used whatsoever. That's a very full 6 days. And we always need 6 good civilians to take the class, so if you're remotely interested, contact me. That is going to occur, as I mentioned, May 23rd. If I'm wrong, it's the 24th, but I think it's the 23rd to the 26th. That is pending that they're going to open up this Atlantic bubble, they call it, which allows travel within the 4 Atlantic provinces, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, without having to quarantine for 14 days. It's tentatively set to open on April 19th, so keeping our fingers crossed. We're going as planned. If we have to adjust, we'll adjust accordingly. All right, now, are we back?
Yep.
Do you have questions?
Yeah, I got one.
You didn't say is that you must live in New Brunswick,
Well, I don't care where you're from, but you have to have been residing, at least for the last 2 weeks, in one of those 4 provinces in order to be able to come to the class. Is that okay?
Yeah, Luther just said that.
Oh, Luther said that. Oh. Any vets to say a shout out to?
Yeah, Joe Bright.
Hey, Joe. Joe's up here, right there. I'm running out of sweaters. We play and they're not giving me back my sweaters.
Is my microphone working?
Yeah, no, that's why Frick's handing it to you from behind.
No, don't use that. Just turn it on.
Oh, Doc Bailey
Hey, Doc.
and Philip Lawrence.
Philip Lawrence. We get some regulars. Correct question, Frick.
All right. First question comes from Ryan in Ohio.
Hi, Ryan.
And he says, do you have a certain ratio you use to size the width according to hallway size, or just whatever looks good? Sorry if you already answered this.
Okay, say that again, please.
Do you have a certain ratio you use to size the width
The width of the table.
of the table
Yeah.
According to hallway size, or just whatever looks good?
Well, the last part is always the overruling principle. It's got to look good. Obviously, if you're in a narrow hallway, if you live in a mobile home, you're going to have a very narrow hall table, and if you're in a huge home which has very wide halls, then you can kind of much do what you want. But yes, it has to fit. So I don't have any figures for you, but they definitely want to be able to comfortably move. And if you're, I mean, it's freestanding furniture, so if you had to move it out for some reason, but you don't want to make it crowded. It's got to fit the space. That's probably a good way of saying it. Any others?
Oh, Kyle from Newfoundland.
Kyle's on? Kyle Perel.
And
Kyle from Newfoundland. Kyle is represented by, actually he's out on my other apron. I think the only thing I still have here from Kyle is right here. Kyle is not a big hockey fan, so he gave this to me. And I can't remember who signed it. That was Theo Fleury, I think. Was it? Moose, do you know Theo Fleury's signature? Who signed that? Whatever Moose says, we'll believe. Kyle, it's great to see you. Sean McDermott. The Sean Shim is on its way. Remind me to talk a little more about that tonight when we get a few more people on. Anybody else? I'm going to keep reminding them because I know there's guys that are on there and I go in later and see that they were there and they didn't get a shout out. So, Combat Wounded Vet, been to our class, please. Megan at Megan. So we see it. Any other questions, Frick?
Yeah, I got a few.
Okay, ask them.
All right,
Get me in the mode here.
This one comes from Mike in Washington, Mike Gottlieb.
Hi, Mike.
And he says, do you have any suggestions for designing table legs that have a taper just on the bottom 1/3 of each leg?
I made a whole bunch of extra. Legs so we could play around with that. So I'm going to answer that question tonight when we get into it. You're inspiring me. Next.
Next one comes from Brad Riley in Vancouver.
Hi, Brad.
He says, how do you start creating a design? Pen and graph paper, computer modeling? What do you use?
No computer crap at all. I don't do that. I start, and I'm very old school and I'm very inefficient. I might make a few sketches, but minimal. I typically, oh, that's what I want to show you. Shoot, where are they, Jake? Here. My wife has been doing some spring cleaning in hopes of bringing spring on, and she found these. So I always built with models and went overboard with that too. So here's a desk that I designed for somebody. Now, I say I would just put a little knife line or saw line through there in order to show the breakup for the drawers. This was a series, a desk, credenza. Parts of it are broken out. There were drawers in it. And I would cut all the dovetails in it. So this was made out of ash and cherry. I liked it well enough, I actually made this for myself. So there, that would have been the front. There's a piece broken off over there. And here, I don't even remember what this was, but that was another piece. And yeah, I used to get carried away cutting these little tiny dovetails up in the top. But I always worked with models because there was no material cost. There's just your time, but you could play around with it. And if you scaled it properly, if you scale it properly, when you look at that, it looks the same as it would if it was full size in the room, if that makes any sense. That's why it's important to go to scale. So I typically work with models. I sometimes will do styrofoam like we're doing tonight and just build it so that it's full size and you can kind of get a better feel of how it's going to fit and what it's going to look like. So I'm very much 3D. Next, Frick.
Just go.
Go?
We don't have that many pre-sent in questions.
No?
So.
All right. So last time we had more or less settled on a bit of on the top. I went in and I finished this so it's done all the way around. So here's the challenge. How can we make this so that it doesn't just look like every hall table that you would see in any department store? How do we personalize it and make it unique? So there's several different ways. We have the option of doing something with the top itself. There's lots of different edge treatments. We could have left that square. We could have had a bullnose on there, which would be a half round, and that would completely change the look of it. I don't think I would put the bevel on the top. I've seen that done before, and it almost looks like it's upside down. And then you have a little bit of a bevel on the bottom side, which just lightens the whole thing. Because what you see, you don't see that thickness. So this instantly changes it from being a, sturdy's not the word, blocky, thank you. Go from being blocky to almost being, and the dainty isn't the word, but refined is. So it goes from a Fred Flintstone piece of furniture to a piece of,
Jackson.
no. Who was the guy that used to have the pitchfork and his wife was the refined? Green Acres. Her taste. Now the legs, if you go with a square, that lends itself to a certain look, a square leg. If you round it, even round part of it, that completely changes it. And that would go with somewhat of a bull-nosed edge. So there's a lot of different stuff. Anyway, so what I want to do is take a couple of these legs and just play around with it a little bit and see if we can't create a little different look. Well, we'll start with the first thing. Actually, I think what I'll start with is an inside taper. So I got to cut my length down here. I can do that easier with the chops or with the. Cut it right here instead of running over to the chop saw and getting mad when it trips. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, my chop saw trips the breaker constantly. I think I can cut. Oh, we just need to do one. All right, so what I was talking about really sets this off and gives it a completely different feel. So coming down from the top, we want to start our taper below our apron. Now, last week or 2 weeks ago, we were working with a 6-inch apron. It's probably a little too heavy, and I'm going to suggest. I think we might even want to cut that down to 4. So if the apron was going to be 4 inches, you don't want to start your taper right at the 4-inch mark because it's too close to being almost looking like a miss. So I'm going to come down to the 4.5-inch mark. I have the challenge of keeping Ken awake again. Wake up, Ken. Now, what we're going to do is going to bring that, what would be an appropriate, I think we could go 3/4 inch. So we're going to taper from 3/4 inch on both sides. Oh, crookeder than a snake. Shout when questions come in, Frick.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have one here.
Okay, if we go and cut this one right now, and then
That's not gonna give you.
this one, so we're gonna protect these two. So the other one is gonna come over on this side. We just need to save that first piece in order to have something to support the cut.
All right, I got a question from Herbie Grief.
Herbie?
He's in England, northeast England.
Hey, Herbie.
And he says,
Good grief.
if using home-dried timber, in my case ash, what should the moisture content fall to before using it in order to avoid warping once the table or any item is constructed?
Well, that's a question that is very specific to where you live. I would guess and say that if you were on the coast, we're on the coast, I would want your lumber to be probably somewhere in the 7 to 8, 9, 10 range. Not 10, too high. In fact, I'm going to even come back down. I'm going to go 8. If you were out in a place like Arizona or Utah where it's extremely dry, you'd probably want around 5 or 6. Remember, and who wrote that book that we just saw the other day, Jake? You bought it. Didn't he have a graph in there of all the different the size changes, the percentage changes going from one? He did, because I read that. Before the night's over, Eric Meyer. I'll find the book that Jake just picked up, because it'll give you graphs. One species of wood. Remember, you're only talking about minor changes. Now, I'm getting a little away from your question because you said, what do you want your wood? What moisture content do you want your wood to start with? And that would be, well, the actual answer is you want it to be whatever equilibrium is in the place where it's going to be. So if you want to do it the absolute best way is pre-cut your lumber, leave it a little bit big, and then stick it in the room that you're actually going to be having it in. Maybe might have to go behind the couch. Sticker it. When I say stick it, I didn't mean stick it. I meant stick it, meaning put spacers in between it. Allow it to acclimate within that room, and then you're not going to have any problem, and you'll know if it's right. But anyway, you pick up this book and it'll tell you what all the different rate of changes are, how much a board's going to move, if it goes from 9% or 10% down to 7%, all that good stuff that I don't bother carrying around in my head because I don't need to. Now I'm going to go over to the bandsaw and just cut this quickly. Don't fall asleep. I got to get this right from the saw because it won't plane very well. Now, in order to get that cut properly, I've got to support it. I probably should do 2 of these in order to get a good idea what it's actually going to look like. And then what we'll do is we'll just do one end. We'll put one end of the table together. Three-quarter down here. Are we getting in these new measuring tapes, Jake?
You tell me.
Tajima sent us their new measuring tape to try. So if you've seen me using the other one, there's great features on this tape, but this one actually is just even a little more comfortable in your hand, and it's a 1/2 inch as opposed to this is 3/4 versus 1 inch. Is that what I was carrying? So it's nice, and I like the fact that it stays when you bring it out, so you release it. I'll let you know what I think after I've had a chance to use it for a while. Questions, Frank? Quiet night.
Why don't you say again why you're making people out of foam?
People are wondering why we're making it out of foam. What? Well, we're making it out of foam because
They must have missed last week's episode,
it's easier
or 2 weeks ago.
to make changes. It's fast, really quick and easy to work. And then if we like what it looks like in foam, then we make it out of wood. But I want to add a little more to that, so just let me make this cut and then I'll come over. So one of the pitfalls of being new at furniture making is you're so enamored with wood that you don't see past the grain when you're designing something. And it's often sometimes shows in their work. So what I'm suggesting is if we do it out of a material that doesn't have any endearing qualities, then you're just going to look at the shape. Now, you can then dress it up with a nice pretty wood, but instead of relying on just the wood, work with styrofoam, then you're just seeing the shape, and you work to get a nice pleasing shape. This is easy. It's cheap. If we changed our mind, we can throw it away, start with another piece, and we're out $5. You do that with wood, not only is there a lot of time involved, but there's also a lot of expense involved. So my suggestion is, or the way I've always done it, is to work with something like styrofoam or inexpensive plywood, particle board, whatever. Just something that allows you to build a full-size three-dimensional model. Now I'm going to go over there and cut one of these down to 4 inches. How wide do we want it? So this is the underside of our table. So obviously whoever asked that question wasn't with us the last couple of weeks, or the last episode. Am I right, Megan? Now, my intent is to have the taper on the inside. So I'm going to go just about like that. Eight and a half. 8.5 by 4. See what that looks like. If you're cutting styrofoam on your table saw, you need to make sure that you have your splitter in. It's difficult to cut because it has no mass, and it'll find its way into the blade. Next thing you know, it gets kicked back at you. Not that it's going to hurt you, but it's certainly startles you. So I've been thinking in my head that everybody watching was already with us 2 weeks ago. So I'll try to forego that thought and explain things as if you're hearing it for the first time. So the nice thing about working with styrofoam to do this is we can put things together with screws or even nails, and it's just a real fast way of experimenting with this. Now, here's something. Do you want your apron to be flush with your leg? That's going to create one look. However, it also has some problems, and the problems are when you're putting it together and now you're having to flush that up or clean it up, you're going to be crossing over grain. In other words, in the attempt to sand this, you're going to be sanding across the grain on that. What I prefer, not to sand, use a hand plane, is to always have that set in. And it gives it some depth. It produces a bit of shadow. You can see it. You don't want to be too close. If you're too close, it looks like a mess. It looks like it should have been flush. So I always purposely set it back. You can go right in the middle if you want, or you can make it a little less bold. In this case, I've got about 1/8 of an inch that's showing. So I'm just going to stick this screw in here. You know what I need is my,
Little drill.
yeah, that little tiny one. Where is it? This one?
Yeah.
It doesn't come as a,
Yeah, if you don't know how to use it.
why? Ken's?
Strictly for one application.
What?
Over drilling the brain.
Megan, what were you responding to when you said that?
I comment about explaining the.
Why we're making that of styrofoam?
Somebody asked,
Specifically, they asked, why are you making it out of styrofoam?
yes, it said, why are you making a table out of styrofoam?
Okay. So are they happy now?
For its strength properties, obviously.
So it would float.
So we can have a backyard wrestling match after.
I'll break it over Frick's head if anything goes wrong.
We're going to need a lot of donations for that.
There would be?
Well, we're going to need some. I'm just not going to take a styrofoam table over the head for no reason.
Well, you wore a... You made famous.
For donations and for sales.
Those countersinking nibs on the screw help.
Oh, they really work on the styrofoam.
Everyone's saying that you should set in the apron.
I should what?
Everyone's saying the apron should be more set in and not flush with the leg.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Well,
You can see. We purposely set it in so it wasn't out here flush. Now, if we put that on, hopefully you're going to be able to tell by... So what we did with this, if you can see it, is that there is a taper just on the inside. So as you... let me actually put a screw down through this to hold it in place.
you
Huh?
out with screws.
Yeah, I'll get some more. I'm just looking to just kind of space this. I think we purposely had this hanging out a little bit. In other words, we didn't have the same reveal on the side as we did on the end. We made it so that this was going to stick out beyond. And I still want to go with that idea. I was pleasantly surprised at the reaction people to this. I wasn't sure whether or not they were going to want it. Okay. What have we got that's the right height? Garbage can?
Do you ever use the golden ratio?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I don't, actually, you know what? In answering that, I probably did at one time, follow it rather closely, but after a while, you just get to knowing it, and not knowing it, but it just turns out that way. When I'm designing a small box, I'll actually show you. I leave my tape measure in my pocket, and instead, I hold the box in my hand, the pieces, and I just kind of envision, well, I want it to be about like that and about like that, and I just will hold the pieces until it just about feels right. And that is, in my opinion, that is a pleasing size for a little wood hinge box. And if you want to know, and you can do the math on it, find out, so this is 2.5 inches tall, it's 3 inches wide, and it's 6 inches long. So it wouldn't be exactly the same because I think it's not a 1-to-2 ratio, but it's pretty close. Give you another example real quick of one that would be. Here's a smaller one. Actually, I've got several of them. Let me pull them out. You guys can vote on it. So here are 4 different boxes. If anybody wants to volunteer at what that ratio is, I think it's 1.66 length to width.
Someone said it in the chat earlier.
Yeah. So which one do you look at and say, well, that's just right? I look at this now and I think maybe that might be a little bit stubby. I like this. Could be just a little bit long. But none of them, I mean, I like them all. I don't like a cube. I don't think a box that was 3 by 3 by 3 would look very pleasing at all. If you're curious about any of them, I'll give you the actual dimensions. All right, now.
Super Dave says, is that the cabinet boxes I made last time I was there?
Is it the what?
Cabinet cabinet of boxes I
Yeah,
made
that's-
last time I was there.
Actually, there's a little pile of wood sitting up on top of that cabinet over there that belongs to him. Good to have you on, Dave. I thought we would stick a piece right in here just to kind of finish this off, or make it a little easier to look at.
$1.618 is the
1.618.
yep.
Did that come from a reputable source or super?
Several reputable sources. Thank you.
None of them are Super Dave, right?
None of them are super Dave. No.
This stuff never splits. It's a great way of doing it, by the way. Need one more screw. Out through the side. Okay. So if we set this well, it's a little bit crooked. So now see that from different angles, Jake. When it's upside down, you can see it even better, the fact that there's a taper on the inside. Now, what I'm going to suggest is, have we got that other table still here?
Yeah, it was back there.
Where is it?
It was back there by the drill presses.
The cherry one?
Oh, that.
It's right out here. We're locked in.
Yeah, Kim put something there.
What are they doing?
I don't know. Sound.
Okay, comments, questions? Do we go somewhere with this? Is it too, it's narrow, which means it's not gonna, well, actually it's not bad. Look at it from this perspective, right here. What I was going to say about that is, the other leg that we can do, and we'll make one, would have no, or would have taper on both sides. And that comes to a, what? All four sides. So you're going to taper, 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 taper. Makes for a real, it just makes it even more dainty is the word I'm going to use. This, I think, just imparts a different look. Instead of actually trying to solve this problem, I guess what I want to do is just more or less give you some things to think about. Now, I'm going to ask you the question, what about the apron? Does the apron look better sized? We were at 6 inches, I moved it down to 4. I'm all ears. What's our delay?
About 10 seconds.
How many? 10 seconds?
5 to 10 seconds, yeah. And if some people started later, they're actually a little bit more behind in the stream.
Oh, you mean because they're watching?
Sometimes it starts from the beginning from whenever they join, so they may be a little bit.
Okay.
Here's a question from the chat. Where'd it go? How do you make sure there's enough strength in the leg when you taper it?
Well,
That's from Jonathan Crane.
so the look of the piece, that's interesting you should say that. If this top was, the edge was left square, and it was a little bit thicker, and the leg looked like this, and that apron was down lower, that somebody might actually come along and sit on it. It just would look robust. Now, even though this is, if this was made out of any hardwood, you're not going to break it. But people would look at it and they would not sit on it because it has that dainty look. I got to come up with a better word than dainty. in terms of if it's being made out of hardwood, the only time I would be concerned with a tapered leg is if it was made out of something like pine. And then you got to be aware that that leg is going to be relatively light and could be broken. But if it was made out of cherry, walnut, ash, oak, maple, you're not going to break it. Don't believe what you see in the movies. When somebody gets hit over the head with a chair and it breaks apart, that's not how it works. They'd be dead. Okay, anything else?
They like the they like that one better.
They like the look of this?
Yeah.
The 4-inch as opposed to the 6-inch.
Yep.
What about the leg? Can they see enough of the taper?
I think so.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and take the time and actually do one and hold it up there, and you can see the difference if we were to take that down to a taper on both sides.
So you go for the same finished dimension at the bottom?
Well, in order to get the taper, I may have to make it a little bit smaller. But we'll start with 4 inches on the top. I'm going to go for, I didn't want to have that big heavy marker in there because it leaves.
Why don't you let us know what we're giving away this evening?
Oh.
And people like the word delicate instead of dainty.
Delicate, thank you.
Could you use majestic?
I've always considered Luther to be dainty, so we need to change that word. All right, so there's my my apron's going to be stopped here, and then I don't start my taper to I'm down below it about a ½ inch. Now we'll come down here. So how big? I'm going to say we could go a ½ inch. So our foot is going to be a ½ inch square. What am I doing here?
Quick question that you can answer.
Yeah.
Nathan Mitchell, who's in New Brunswick with us, he wants to know where you get 1 inch MDF here.
Where you get 1 inch MDF?
Yeah.
Richelieu Hardware in Moncton.
McFadden's?
McFadden's in Moncton. Robert Burry in Moncton.
There's one of those Sharpie pens.
It's relatively easy to get. However, there's only, how many plants did they say that actually make it, and one of them burned down recently? So not only is there increased demand for it right now, but the supply has been seriously hampered because they lost a plant. So we've had to resort to buying sheets that are 4x10 and 5x10 because the common sizes 4x8 are the ones that they've run out of. Now somebody just asked me a question and I was planning to answer it and then I've lost.
Where do you get it locally?
No.
Oh.
What was the other question you fricked?
To find it.
So what I'm doing is I'm just drawing a straight line from I measured the bottom of this leg, which is 1 9/16 square.
Oh, how do you make sure there's enough strength in the leg when you taper it? That was the original question.
You don't want to do all of this.
Why?
You're going to lose those lines.
No. I take the piece and then put it back on. That's how you have to do it. So I'm starting at the bottom, or starting up here at the 4.5 inch mark. I've picked a center ½ inch on both sides, but as Jake just mentioned, when you start cutting it on the bandsaw, you're going to lose it. So that's why you have to save. You have to save the piece. Let's go over to the bandsaw. No, I got them both. This is going to cut, and then this is going to cut. I might want to use a piece of masking tape. You can normally do it with tape. You just got to hold it in place. Now you can also make a tapered jig, and the tapered jig allows you to do this a lot quicker. If you haven't seen it, Google a tapered cutting jig. It's really quite simple. So I'm going to try to stay right on the line. Now I'm going to need that piece. I went 1/2 inch, and I think on the last one I built, I left 5/8 square on the bottom. Okay, so what we need to do, which is the piece right here, we need to put this piece back on so that it'll keep us cutting square. And we'll just tape this back in place. Mind you, this stuff bends so easily. Oh, I know what you asked me, Frick. What we're giving away tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Let me get this done and then we'll come over and talk about it. For anybody keeping count, this is my son Bo's 17th birthday today. So happy birthday, Bo. Now, I'm going to put this back here. In fact, let's actually attach this on this end and it'll allow us to have a little better look at it. Yeah, I'm going to cut some of it off. Make sure I cut that the right length. How far back are we? 4 inches.
Still screwing.
So the idea here is we're going to have different tapers at each end, and it'll give us a chance to look at it and decide which we prefer. What did I do with that driver?
Over there on the table, so. Van is down.
Thank you, Moose. How many on tonight, Frick?
We have 653 right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And hit the bell.
Same idea. We'll have a little bit of exposure. I hit the screw. Now, can you get a feel for that?
Can't really see it.
Huh?
Almost disappeared.
Which? The taper?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with both of them, but this is going to make, what was the word?
Delicate.
This is going to make it more delicate, and it is. It's a smaller, narrower foot, but it's still plenty strong enough in hardwood. That gets a little more beef. And then just for comparison's sake, if we put this one back on, looks totally out of place now, that big one. And I actually like this inside taper better. It's just enough that it seems to give it appearance of strength without being too bold like that one is over there. Now, if we get time, okay, oh yeah, one more thing. Let's, we talked about putting a slight radius on that apron. So let's do one like that, one piece, and just see what you think of that. What do we need for length? 26 inches. I've got some that I already cut up. Okay, before I go any further, so here's our big announcement. Close in on moose. We started talking about this how long ago?
It's been probably a month and a half. Well, we talked about it for longer.
Yeah, I think it was actually last year.
Yeah.
So Moose and his wife Pat have Pat's Secret Garden. So we have Canada's oldest surviving farmers market. It's a big old building built on the side of a hill. Looks like a ship turned upside down. St. John was a busy shipbuilding port for years. And this market, anybody that comes to the city has to go to this market. And Moose has the center stall. He sells a lot of T-shirts and souvenirs of the city. And this particular garment he's wearing has become affectionately known as the dead cat sweater because it feels like holding a live cat. Blame Frick for the dead cat name. It is so warm. In fact, it's so warm. I got to read you this quick text. A friend of mine, Chris Davenport, bought 2 of them the other day, and he sent me a text later in the day after actually having wearing it. And he asked me, if I find that real quick, he said, there's a picture of him on it. He says, this thing has a built-in heat source. I'm certain of it. I told him it's the warmest garment you'll ever wear. I wear it minus 15 Celsius, wind blowing, and that's all I've got on is, well, on the top is just this garment. It's fantastic. And anybody that's taken my advice and got one says the same thing. Anyway, so to tie it in with our Purple Heart, and Moose donates the clothing that we give away. In fact, tonight what we're going to do is we're going to give away 3 Dead Cats sweaters, the new Purple Heart version.
Hands.
Pardon?
They're all holding hands.
Yes, they're all holding hands. So we start with our small, medium, large, extra large, double extra large, and triple extra large. So you can get one if you're not lucky enough to get on the draw tonight at patsecretgarden.com. Frick will put the link up in there. And Moose has put in a nice display in the market talking all about our Purple Heart program, which I'm sure you already know is where we bring in 6 times a year under conditions that allow. we bring in 7 at a time, combat wounded veterans, and you and I take care of their airfare, all the travel expenses, their hotel, their meals. We feed them the very best while they're here. We treat them to a 6-day, very intense, in fact, I don't think anybody would teach a course more intense than what we do here. We get them here around 7 in the morning. We have breakfast. We're at our bench at 8, and we're there, with the exception of lunch and supper, we're there until 11 o'clock at night. And first thing we do is get them learning how to sharpen and use a hand plane, and that just de-stresses the entire atmosphere. All you hear is just people planing boards, doing things that they never thought possible or had never experienced before. And until you've had somebody provide you with the opportunity to use a plane that has been properly tuned and sharpened, where it will lift a piece of maple a half a thou thick and leave a surface behind that is flawless to the touch. Anything you did with sandpaper would scratch it up. And it is, it's very calming. That's why they call this distractive therapy. That's why we say wood is good. Do I have my wood is good on? Mm-hmm. Good. Anyway, so Moose decided to take the ball and run with it. His supplier generously donated the work to getting the logo ready, and they just came in. We missed it last time we filmed, but now we have it. So if you want to be a part of what we're doing, and let me back up just a little bit. One of the reasons we do this is we can raise the money. We'd pay for this ourselves if we had to, but we share the opportunity, and a lot of you know what it's all about. However, our single biggest problem has always been finding those injured soldiers who need our help. They tend to isolate themselves at home. Every one of them will tell you that. They're not comfortable out in society due to their combat experience, which means how do you find them? Unless somebody that is close to them finds out about it, they're never going to know. So the more people that talk about it, the more it's mentioned, the more chances someone is going to say, hey, I've got a brother, a nephew, a cousin who suffers terribly from PTSD or traumatic brain injury or lost a limb or limbs in war. That's how they find out. Then they can apply, and hopefully we can encourage them. And I might add that once we've done the selection process, talk to Luther or Super Dave, that's where the work starts. Keeping them on track once they've been given the opportunity to come prior to the actual date, and keeping them from feeling guilty like somebody else deserves it more than them, it's a lot of work. And I think of Jeff, who Jeff was one of the greatest students we ever had in terms of the atmosphere that he created and the help that he offered just by being who he was. And he wouldn't have come had Luther not stayed in touch with him, kept him up on it, and talked him out of withdrawing his name, saying, no, you really need to be here. And Jeff, you know who I am, so big kudos to you. And Luther, thanks for what you do.
I think it's pretty obvious that Jeff would be our second greatest student ever.
Oh, you mean after Super Dave?
No,
No? Who was our greatest?
I don't know, somebody else.
Oh.
Not Super Dave.
Yeah. So anyway, by wearing this stuff and that Purple Heart, somebody asks you about it, you get an opportunity, if you're not comfortable enough, just to strike up a conversation. And I'm not calling for missionaries, but if you want to be one, by all means, the more people that know, the more opportunity we have to find those people that need it. So sweaters are now available. We'll carry them in all those sizes. We're going to give away 3 tonight. And whoever gets lucky enough, tell us what size you want, and that'll be in the mail to you.
Do people want to know, do they shrink in the wash?
They,
Rob's never washed
Yeah,
his,
Rob's
so he
never
doesn't
washed it.
know.
yeah, Rob's a bit of a pig, but
You should be focusing over there,
It's
Jake.
all mad
Jake.
like a dead cat.
Rob has one for doing whatever and another one for going to town.
3.
They should be washed, cold water, gentle cycle, and hung to dry or dry low heat. But you can throw them in a hot water wash and throw them in the dryer and they still won't shrink. They're polyester, so they won't shrink. What happens if you don't follow the instructions, you'll probably get some wear and tear around the emblem, which for me is the star of the show. So because it's not polyester, it's probably cotton and other things. So if you want to treat it properly, best is to hang it dry, but it will not shrink. But if you start putting it in a hot dryer, you might get some some puckering or something around your press.
Wear it on a warm day and you will shrink.
You will. You'll be
I'm telling you,
lighter.
I'm not kidding you when I say this. It is the warmest garment. It weighs next to nothing, and it'll
I
just
can't
keep
wait
you
to
on.
get home.
I'm sweating to death right now.
What's that?
I'm sweating to death right now.
And you have nothing on underneath that. We don't
Well,
want
I've
to.
seen you in the
We do not
naughty
want to
girl.
know any more about that. Did you get Frick in his?
Girl Frick, you're pretty
They can
hot.
see me on the Frick cam.
I have mine, but I'm working. I know how warm it is. Great garment. Thank you, Moose. Don't forget, too, we've got our T-shirts that Angie and Lynn, and they're part of our team. That's Angie, working tirelessly, packaging up all of those T-shirts. So when you get a T-shirt from us and it's neatly packaged and there's a little A written on there, that's Angie's. She's QC, quality control. So wood for good, wood is good, wood doing good, with the Purple Heart logo on the other side. And the other sweaters are hockey jerseys that we sponsor, Pick Up Hockey, and we have the name of every vet that has come to our program emblazoned on the back, so we'll always remember them. There's a lot more than that, but that's the only ones I could find right now.
So what are we giving away?
What are we giving away? Well, you know what? We thought about that earlier, and then I never got back to it. What do you want? I'm open for suggestions. What would you like us to give away tonight? Give us some suggestions, and then we'll go with it from there. Question.
Oh, you want a question?
Yep.
Okay. This comes from Martin in Bavaria.
Martin in Bavaria.
He says, is it enough to only varnish the top of the tabletop, or does it warp more easily because of the humidity reaches the wood on one side?
Well, as a rule, if it's an unsupported piece, this is what I mean. And this is a classic example of that. So here's the little box. This is made out of Macassar ebony, that's the dark wood on the sides, and fiddleback maple on the front, the back, the front, and the top. So the top has a finish on all sides. And I do that because the top is unsupported. It's fastened right here, the hinge, but the rest of it is completely unsupported. So you want to try to make that as stable as possible. If you only had a finish on one side, even though there's no finish that's going to be absolutely impervious to moisture or transmission of moisture, but it does slow it down. So if this was bare wood, this was finished wood, as the moisture in the room would change, it would leave this side more readily than that side, throwing it slightly out of balance, and you're probably going to end up having some movement, a cup. On these four pieces, I only have finish on the outside. It's bare wood on the inside. Why? How come I can get away with it? Well, because you have a very strong joint that is holding these pieces and preventing them from cupping. As I've said numerous times, it is not difficult to prevent wood from cupping. Now, I got a piece, here's a piece right here. I was making something for my wife. So here's a piece of really thin pine. And when the moisture changes, and if it's uneven, it'll easily bend like this. That's called cupping. However, you can prevent that from occurring. If I put a stick of wood that was thicker, like that, there's no way it's going to cup. It will prevent it from cupping. However, what you can't do is prevent it from expanding as it absorbs moisture, or shrinking as it gives off moisture. So when we talk about cross-grain construction, you can't build like this, gluing this piece to that piece. You're preventing both of these pieces from moving the way they want. But you can easily prevent this from cupping. So if you're on a tabletop like this, I would want to have the top finished, bottom and top, all the way around, seal it. And what all that does is it means that the moisture loss or gain is going to be equal top, bottom, sides, instead of having one removing moisture quicker because it's unfinished. So you can't, like I said, you cannot stop it from occurring, but you want it to occur at the same rate all the way around the board if it's in a situation where it's somewhat free to move like the top of a table would be. Next, Frick.
There's some bets. Paul Morrison is on.
Paul, Commander, has his title changed? Lieutenant Commander? Paul's Canadian Navy. Let me know, Paul. I want to make sure you got the right title.
Charlie Ray.
Charlie, salt of the earth.
Kevin Burris.
Hey, Kev, brother.
And Ray Dorr.
I need to call you someday, Kev. And Ray?
Yeah, Ray Dorr.
Cool Ray from Louisiana. I kept my Christmas card, Ray. Anyone else?
Not.
Mark Smith on?
Haven't seen Mark.
Mark was a combat wounded vet that came and went to work with us a year ago and helped us get this place ready. And his wife has since joined the military so that they can all be a family together. Mark is moving back to Ontario, he and his 2 children, to join his wife in a couple of weeks. So he was in to say goodbye today. See you, Mark. Anyone else? Tony on? Tony will be here soon enough. Next question, Frick.
Okay, next question comes from Danny in Queensland, Australia.
Hey, Danny, no, actually it's middle of the day for them.
He says, what is your preferred method of attaching and supporting a floating top, tabletop, or a side table? For a side table.
Floating top?
Your method of attaching and supporting a floating top, tabletop for a side table.
Have we done a video on that, Jake? But we explained it quite in depth, did we, on our last live?
Yeah.
Okay, so Danny, what I'm going to do, I'm going to suggest you go back and watch the one that we aired 2 weeks ago. And if I had an example right here, I could show you, but I don't. It's in the other room, and they've got the door locked on us. But it's a means of attaching the top with dowels, but not like you would think. Really unique way of doing it. I dreamt it up several years ago. I should write about it, but I haven't gotten around to doing it. But it's a nice, slick way. The dowel fastens to the bottom side. So in this case, the dowels would be running like this, and they would be flattened off on the top of the dowel, not halfway, but you'd have about this much of a circle, and that flat spot would be glued or screwed to the underside of the table. The apron would have that much of a hole cut on the top. However, it would be a dry fit. So as the table moves like this, that dowel would just slide in that hole or pull back in, but always remaining tight yet unrestricted. On the ends, you would have a dowel attached sitting like this. Make this a little bit easier. So at the end, you would have a dowel in the middle. This table's wiggly. And out here, you would have dowels. Now these dowels would be attached to the underside. I'd probably have one more over here. Now come over here and let me show you what I mean.
So we're just going to explain it all.
Well, I never did show it in this detail, so we'll take the opportunity right now. Oh, my 5.5's in the other shop.
Getting a lot of suggestions as to what you should give away.
Yeah.
A lot of suggestions for planes, chisels. Someone said you should give away a bench.
Who was that generous soul?
Tom was his name.
Dovetail saws.
Maybe you should give like a credit, since everyone wants something different.
No, that wasn't exciting enough. Yeah. Okay, now let me show you what this is going to look like.
Go back to the drawing board.
All right.
There's been a lot of suggestions.
The gentleman who asked the question, he clarified, he means a tabletop that sits an inch above the rail, a suspended top.
Oh. Okay. Well, now that I'm already into this, let me explain it first. So here's my dowel. Okay? I've flattened off the top. So this would fit, this would fasten to the underside of the table like that. And then the apron that it would fit into would have a hole cut in it that looks like this. Okay? So you obviously have, if the circle is 360 degrees, half a circle would be 180. We have what, maybe 300 degrees of a circle? So when that dowel sits in there, because you've got part of the circle coming up around both sides, it holds it securely, although it's a tight fit, although not glued. It's fastened to the underside of the table, and as this table top expands and contracts, it moves in and out of that hole, but remains nice and tight. Now, I've done them where I've actually cut that all the way through, so you literally had a hole all the way through, and you would see the dowel, or you would see the end of the dowel out here. Do it out of a different wood, make a feature out of it. If not, you would drill that hole so that it stopped right here, and it was only open from there to there. When you put your dowel in, you'd stop somewhere about like that, leaving enough room in here for expansion. Now, the question was, a floating top that is just going to be sitting. So every once in a while you'll see a table designed where the top is literally unattached, except for the fact that it might be held by a couple of small pieces. So in other words, you're sitting there looking at a table that's almost floating in midair. What would I do to keep that stable? I would be very, if I was going to do something like that, there would be a fair bit of planning ahead. Number one, if I could use quarter-sawn lumber, that's lumber that when you look at the edge, you see the grain lines running perpendicular to the flat side of the board. That's just going to be your best bet in finding a piece, that naturally occurring piece that's going to stay nice and flat. I would make sure that the wood was nice and dry. In rough form, feed that child. In rough form, I would have it in the room where the piece is going to be, and I would let it sit there for 2 or 3 months, depending on the thickness. And then I would eventually mill it. And if you got it flat, first of all, if in the rough form it really deformed while sitting in that room and acclimating, then I would be very suspicious that that probably is going to continue to misbehave. If it didn't move too bad, I'll just interrupt myself for a second. When I build a bench and it's made up out of several pieces, we always mill up 3 or 4 extra pieces, let them all sit and acclimate, and any of the ones that twist badly during that period, we definitely don't use those. That's just a bad piece of wood. So I've got my tabletop, I've let it sit, I've let it acclimate, it hasn't moved very bad. I then come in and mill it down, and if you were really worried, mill it down to maybe 20% thicker than what you want to finish up with, and let it sit again. Every time you remove material, you're going to disrupt the inner stress of that board. Always wanting to make sure you take the same amount off top and bottom. And then on the third time, or the second time you're going at it, take it down to final dimension, finish it off, put a finish on it, and you should be good. And if it doesn't work, blame Mother Nature. But it's a little bit of a risky venture going into something like that, but you can do a lot leading up to it that will help guarantee success, and like I just mentioned.
We've had a lot of suggestions for dovetail saws or one of your boxes, or even like a 30-minute call with you to help them on a project.
30-minute call.
Oh, I could put you to sleep.
Can Frick enter in that one?
Someone actually said you should give away B,
Give away you?
but you've been trying that for 13 years.
So I'm going to give away this. I asked Jake earlier. This is my own dovetail saw.
He said yes.
This is a beautiful bird's eye maple saw. See that? And it's been sitting in my tool crib, and I've been using it for probably 3 or 4 years. But I get bored. It's time to move on, make another saw. So tonight we'll give away this saw to someone, some lucky individual. I'll make sure it's sharp before it comes. We'll sit it right here on display. We got to give it. We give away one prize for every $1,000 increment in donations to the Purple Heart Project. So keep that in mind. You don't have to donate in order to.
So is that going to count as
Win.
just the one prize at one increment?
Well, that should probably count for $2,000.
Well, we could give away
That saw, if we were
couple
selling
hour-long call with Super Dave. He's got nothing to do.
a day, that saw would sell. We would sell that saw for $800.
Donation.
if you were calling to order one. That's a piece of premium bird's eye. So that'll account for
First 2,000.
the first 2,000.
And then we'll.
And after that, I'll give away. Oh, it landed on the cushion. My nice curly maple marking gauge. What am I, retiring?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're gonna be out of tools.
And I'll sign them somewhere so that you know they were authentic. They come right off of my bench. And if we get up beyond that, I'll get real generous. Okay, so those are the prizes for tonight. Plus our 3 dead cats. Fluffies, for those who don't like Frick's name. Questions, Frick? Remember to register, you just have to go in. And am I supposed to be reading something?
Super Dave says his call would be priceless.
True.
All right, just a second.
Better than that. Okay, what are you doing?
I got a question.
Okay, read it.
It's from Daniel in Culpeper, Virginia.
Hey, Daniel.
He says, any ideas for designing an expanding dining room table with internal storage for 2 table leaves?
Well, that's not a. Get another question. That's not a simple question.
Why don't?
That's a pretty in-depth question. I can't pull that one out of thin air.
Super Dave says, why don't we give away Jake's dovetail saw? Oh wait, never mind.
Whoa, the barbs.
Is there any way to block?
We're gonna start.
There is, actually.
We're gonna start repossessing all of the things Dave has.
We could put an embargo on Verawood and really make them hurt.
Christian in Guatemala says, do you always build a model when designing furniture, or can sometimes just a few drawings be good enough?
Well, you can do whatever you want, Christian.
He's asking you.
Oh, yeah. Do I always? Oh, he didn't say do you have to. He said do you.
Do you?
I've been out of the business for a while. However, when I say out of the business, the last time I built a piece of furniture that was a commissioned piece was probably back. Actually, I did something for someone in like 2007 or 2008, but I really stopped building furniture for a living in 2000, just before we starved, and I started selling tools for Lee Nielsen, and I got back into it in earnest in 2011 when I started our online workshop where we would teach people, and in that setting we always designed it. I mean, even if you come back here, let's come back here and take a look at this for a second. Here's a good example of where it worked. So we wanted to design a mobile tool cabinet that the average person working in their garage shop would be able to move it about as they shared the space with their wife's car. For me, I needed something that I could travel with. I used to be on the road on a regular basis doing woodworking shows all over Kingdom Come, and I needed something when I went in to teach. I needed a means of displaying all of the tools, not so much displaying them, but having them there ready to use. So what we did, and this was all done, we started off with a model, and we started off with a model to get the feel for the space. And by that I mean it needed to feel right. I don't know how to put that in any other words. But it grew from a model, and we changed the model. In fact, this is all on, there's all video record of all this because it was filmed. We went in and we built the model. It was a quarter scale, I think, and just tried to get relationship of the bottom piece to the top piece and the whole bit. Then we went in and we built this in full-size mock-up out of plywood, and we had to because we had to make sure that we had placement for all of the tools. Now, if you've never seen this before, I'll show you how it works. Ken has inhabited this, so
We won't.
we can't now. But these pieces come off. I'll just show you briefly. These side wings come off, and we designed them so that they would be really quick and easy to move. So these dowels go through, but they go through on an angle like that. So there's 3 of them, And because they're on an angle and gravity's pulling them down, we made this a little bit shorter than this so that when it's sitting on there, it wasn't actually resting on the base, it was suspended. And gravity would keep it tight, as you see over here, to this piece. So you didn't have to worry about it. Well, when this is ready to pack up, these two, pardon?
Hammer back then?
What happened? When we're ready to, that's not his hammer, that's why. The one with the hole's missing. These two piece outside wings fit in there, and then this center section fits right in there behind it, nice and cozy. And in this area right here, we have our shooting board and our bench hook. Over here, these pieces on the bottom that have the wheels, they're held in place. They have two pins that come up through the bottom. So when you lift this up, they'll just drop off. And they actually fit up inside there. So when this is ready to travel, it's just it's a closed box made out of plywood. We did that because I knew that if you shipped them with the legs on, the feet on, the wheels on, they would get destroyed. So it's all up inside, sits on a pallet, and away you go. These, the doors come off. This door comes off, and all the components are in there, fit in there to turn this into a saw bench. This door comes off, and it's been painted with melamine paint so that it becomes a whiteboard. It just readily detaches. And then in here you have your drawers for all of your various components. These are all the dovetail tools. These are all the screws that you would need. This is all we keep all of our sharpening gear. And this one, which we have yet to figure out, has a $2 bill in it that Phil gave that to me. Up here, just for the sake of interest, we have all the essential tools. This is my level. So the level goes in there, and then it falls down into a little slot so that it won't fall off when traveling. You've got your crosscut saw and your rip saw on either side. All of your chisels are on with magnets, which I use too powerful of magnets. My straight edge is sitting here. This is the scrub plane goes in and then drops down into a little recessed area that has that profile so that it doesn't fall out. There's my router plane that sits up in there and held with a magnet. My skew block plane with the fence on it. Somewhere it's missing, but it's my 12-inch combination square. And then all your drilling tools over here. My drawer bottom plane sitting in there. So I find it very effective to work with models, and in particular, oh, and by the way, so this project was all done with hand tools. There were no power tools involved. So the lumber was all dimensioned from rough. The plywood, obviously I didn't make the plywood, but the dovetails were all cut, and then dovetails were all not only dovetailed, but then they were pinned with dowels opposite direction to give it a little extra strength. And the idea when I built this was that sooner or later this outside case would be destroyed just from moving. So everything inside was screwed into place, so when the time came, I could simply make a new outside case, fit everything in there, and be good to go. So I'm not one to be good enough with a pen to draw the way I want, and I would rather take the time and actually build. When I was building furniture for a living, I would go from the model phase to a full-size mock-up using styrofoam. That's where the idea started. And then you bring it into the client's home and put it in place. And if she thought it was too big, at least it was made out of styrofoam, not the finished piece of wood. Or if it was too small, or if it didn't just quite fit, whatever reason. But you didn't have so much invested that it was going to be a disaster should it not be satisfactory. And it wasn't too late to make changes. Question, Fred? That was a good one.
Yes. This one comes from John Hennick in Michigan.
Hi, John.
He says, I like drawers in a table. Can you implement more ideas how to make drawer slides that you can open using just one knob to the side of a 2-knob drawer?
Okay, say that again.
I like drawers in a table. Can you implement...
Drawers?
Well, he spells it drawers, but he means...
Drawers in a table. So I'm assuming drawers in something like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you implement more ideas how to make drawer slides that you can open using just one knob to the side of a 2-knob drawer. Does that make sense?
I'm trying. The last part threw me. I'm not getting it. So I'm going to ask you, submit your question again. Just try to rephrase it, because I'm not catching. If somebody else has an idea of what he means, speak up so we can answer it. But I can't answer it based on the way I'm hearing it, because it's not computing in my head.
All right, I got another one.
Okay.
This one's from Cared Winder and
Karen?
Cared.
Cared?
K-E-R-E-D. Winder
Cared?
in United Kingdom. Which machine do you feel is more appropriate for tapering legs on all 4 sides if using a tapering jig?
Oh, you know what? I don't expect to take the taper off of any power tool ready to go. If you've got a lot to do, then you want to make a jig for the table saw. So all it really involves is the blade is always going to be parallel to the table, right? So you get a jig that holds your board like that. So the jig is supported against the table, so that when you pass through the blade, your piece of wood is on an angle. Obviously, it wouldn't be that extreme, and it's going through like that, and it's cutting off that nice straight taper. If you're doing a lot, you definitely would want to make a jig. If you're only doing one thing, I would take it over to the bandsaw and do it just like I did over there, because I would always refine it with the hand plane. Then that allows you to go in and perfect it, and when you're done shaping it, it's done, period, because you now have that hand plane finish that you can't beat with anything else. And the grain is running such that in most cases, when you taper a leg, the grain is going to be in such a direction that you start here and go to the small end, you're going to be going with the grain, and you're going to come off with a beautiful surface. So hand plane's always my number one. If I was going to choose, I would probably say bandsaw as the power tool, hand plane as the finishing tool. Good question.
Mrs. Claus says, just a quick thank you for all the prayers and support for Santa. Santa had a rough go at first, but should be up and going real soon. We can't wait to get back into PHP.
I was going to mention that in the beginning. I thought I'd wait till we had a few more people. Just in case you don't know, Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus are 2 individuals that probably represent the most generous people that I have ever found out about. I've never actually met them. We've never spoken on the phone. But from way back in 2015, he started financing us in terms of, he would send us money and say, why don't you just give away some tools? And he paid full retail, and he covered the shipping. He didn't want it to come off of us, but it allowed us to just give stuff away. And every week we would give $300 or $400 worth of tools away to people just through draws. And then he got sick. And when he came back to us, he was instrumental in helping, in me being able to help Jesse get on his feet. And in fact, I would say that Santa Claus was probably the primary influence on equal footing with Jesse in me starting the Purple Heart Project. That's how important he is, and his wife. Because behind every good man,
It's a good wife.
a better woman. Is that true, Megan?
In this case.
Let me speak personally.
So now he was sick, and I had no idea what happened to him. But not too long ago, he contacted me, and now he finances most of the prizes that we give away every 2 weeks. He's a Vietnam vet, and he just generous beyond belief. So I remember one year he paid for 5 people to come to our workshop, covered all their expenses. It was incredible. I just found out recently that I know his wife had got COVID, and shortly thereafter he got COVID. So we mentioned it 2 weeks ago. But I'm wonderful to hear that he's been on the mend, and can't wait to have you back here. Frick. Any more vets? Any more vets speak up?
Gary Burnett.
Gary, hey Gary, if you are a combat wounded vet that has been to our workshop and been one of our guests, please, in the comment section, at Megan, and then tell us your name and what class you were in so we can give you a shout out.
8:30.
Okay, Frick?
All right, this one comes from Ming in Malaysia.
Where? No, yeah, we've been around the world.
We've been around the world
This is
tonight.
awesome.
Yep.
Ming?
Most of the time when I make something big like a table, I usually, or rather most of the time, am drawn towards denser wood. Like in my area, I use balau. It has a density of roughly 1,000 kilograms per metric cube, so it is probably harder or equal to oak. So the question is, how do I gauge a suitable wood for the piece of furniture?
Frick?
Yes.
Read that again, please. I'm trying to determine, I'm trying to filter out the question.
Well, they say in their area, Malaysia, they use
Yeah.
balau, which is a density, well, it's like
Very-
oak.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you gauge a suitable wood for a piece of furniture? So how do you decide what to use, what wood to use
okay.
with? I think.
Well, really, I would, okay, so if we were going to build this table, beautiful little table, if it was in my house 15 years ago, full of kids, I know it's going to get beat up. They're going to run into it. They're going to put wet mitts on it. So taking that into account, you're not going to believe this, but I find the best wood for building furniture like this is northern white pine. It's soft, it gets beat up easily, but guess what? In the situation that I just described, any wood is going to get beat up. Pine just happens to take the abuse much better. It almost is expected. In fact, most of the furniture that you find that has been distressed is made out of pine. They've gone in and purposely beat it with a chain and scratched it up and whatever to give it that lived look. Pine ages the best out of all the woods. It ages the best, and those dings and dents from life seem to just fit its character. So in that circumstance, pine. If I was building this for a retired couple, well, then I would build any wood they want. And I would probably, you take into account the color. You always have to remember that all woods are going to oxidize. Now, about the only way you can prevent that is to go in and actually stain them. And when I say that, I'm not a big fan of stain, but if you wanted to make this out of walnut and still have it look like walnut in 10 years' time, then you probably would need to go in and stain it with a walnut stain to help maintain that color. Otherwise, you're going to end up with, and I'll show you a quick example of what happens when walnut oxidizes. Here's a walnut wood hinge box. So there's the color of the wood on the outside, and mind you, it hasn't had a lot of exposure, but you can see the difference of the color on the inside.
More on the sides.
More on the sides. See, actually, if you can kind of see it like that. By the way, that was donation money that came from the workshop we did in Ormocto last week. So you're going to maintain your color with some stain to help it. So I say that only because if you're building somebody a table out of Paduke, which is a brilliant orange, sounds a little bit gaudy, I know, but if you're going to build something out of Paduke, they may be mad at you come a year later and it's no longer orange. Now watch and see what happens when I plane the top of this. Actually, that one didn't change too bad. If I could find a piece of this that had oxidized. This has been sitting inside my shop, and there are no windows. So that's not the greatest example. If I dug around here enough, that Maloof rocker that I made is almost a brownish, a dark brown, and that at one time was a brilliant orange. So if the wood, whatever you're working or whatever you're building is going to be put in an area where there's a fair bit of UV light, you have to be aware that the color is going to change. So other than the color, I don't think I would put anything else into that except for strengths. And if it's a really, really soft weak wood, then you can't build. This would not work well in a really weak wood, but in any of the domestic hardwoods that we have, that would be fine. Either that double taper or the quadruple taper. Hopefully that gives you something to think about.
I think 40.
Frick?
All right, this one comes from Troy Cleveland in Petawawa, Ontario.
Petawawa, Ontario. Troy?
Yes, sir.
That has to be military.
All right, it's a little bit of a long one, too.
Thank you, sir.
Once the table is complete, I've had issues with making the legs even. No matter if they're all cut exactly the same, they always have one or two that need to be adjusted to rid it of that unstable wobble. What techniques do you use to ensure a stable table both before and after assembly?
Before you run out of table, run out of leg?
Yeah.
So I would take this and I would put it over on a surface that I know is dead flat. And then if you got 4 legs, that's why milk stools only have 3. So you've got 4 legs, and one is always going to end up being high, meaning it's not touching. So determine how much it is, how much it's up, and then take something. The easiest way to do this would be to take something like a flush trim saw, and if it was up as much as 1/8 of an inch, see if we can do this. So I've got 4 legs sitting there, and 3 of them are making contact and 1 isn't. So get somebody to hold it so it doesn't move. I would come in with however the appropriate amount I need to remove. Actually, I would take this and put it on both sides.
Would you miter it too?
No, I wouldn't miter it. Put it on both sides, and then using your flush trim saw, come in and cut that amount off, and you might have to go through and do all 3 until you get it so that it sits nice and stable. As opposed to trying to take it and plane a certain amount off all of them, I find you're far better off to go in a situation like that. Now what you would do is once you've cut this one off, then you've got to put a shim underneath it. So that one stays put and it's not sitting low. Then you go over to the next one, put a shim underneath it after it's cut, and then do the final one. And when you take all the shims out, hopefully it'll sit right down and lay nice and flat. Now remember, that one that's high, you don't want to saw on top of the I would check it. So if that shim perfectly fit underneath that one that was not touching, you can't use that. You can't use that as a means of putting your saw on for the others. You've got to take the thickness of the saw blade off of this. And sometimes using masking tape would really help. So if I had a shim like this and I put maybe 3 layers of masking tape on there and that worked out perfectly, then I could just take off however many layers of the masking tape, compensate for the thickness of that saw, and use that as my guide for going in and cutting. But I always did it, I always sawed the legs sitting on a flat, known flat surface to be the best and the most accurate way to get them all to work. And then your table goes from this height to this height to this height, and soon, before you run out of table, you'll get them all right. And that's not uncommon. I mean, you're dealing with 4 tables, you've got all those mortise and tenon joints, it's almost always going to be a little out of whack. Last question. Got to end a little bit early tonight. I wanted one more question. I'm going to wrap up my thoughts on the table, and then we'll do our draw. Remember, we're giving away tonight 3 of the Dead Cat sweaters, and for every $1,000 tooth, if we get tooth, how much have we had donated?
2,800.
Okay, so we're going to give away my Bird's Eye Maple dovetail saw. It's got some good dovetails left in it, guarantee. And if we hit another 1,000, if we hit 3,000, I'll give away my Fiddleback Maple marking gauge. Fortunately, I know where they came from, and I can get others. Last question.
All right, this one comes from Dave Potts in New Jersey.
Hi, Dave, in New Jersey.
He says, what are your thoughts on letting 2 leg mortises at right angles connect, then mitering the tenon for a longer reach? Or does connecting the mortises just weaken the leg by removing too much stock?
Oh, okay. So what Dave is talking about is at the top, and this is problematic because you don't have a ton of material. So if we look And by the way, Jake, where's that marker that I had earlier? Didn't I leave it sitting here somewhere, that Sharpie? Does that work? Okay. So here's the problem. You've got a relatively small piece of material. This is 1 9/16 inches thick. And you've got to join this apron into it, and you've got to join this apron into it. So, in plan view, looking down from the top, and remember, this apron is only going to be as strong as the tenon is thick. So if you've got a 3/4 inch wide apron and then you end up cut it down to a 1/4 inch tenon, well, you may as well have a 1/4 inch piece of material going through there. So you got to keep it fairly robust. So you're cutting your mortise in here, and then you've got your other side. So you're going to be cutting your mortise in here. Now, if you end up cutting in so that all of this, if you ended up cutting this one all the way down and that one all the way down, now you don't have very much material holding that piece to the rest of the leg, and that makes for a really weak setting. So any kind of a knock on that leg, remember, if it's a good solid joint and that gets hit heavily with a vacuum cleaner, that's a lot of leverage between there and way up here. So you want to build for that. The first suggestion that I would have would be, if it was a 4-inch tenon, or a 4-inch apron, I would split that up. Now I would start my tenon down here, my mortise, sorry, so that there's enough connective material between this piece and over top of the mortise that it will hold together. I would put a mortise there, and then I would have a second mortise down here. So I would split it up. Instead of having one long one, I would have two. What that does, if you had one long one, then you have no connective material between this piece and this piece over that big long span, and that really weakens it. By having a separate mortise here and a separate mortise there, you have this connective material in here, and that's going to go a long way to strengthening it. If you move your tenons out so that you have some reveal but not a ton, and by that I mean, instead of putting your mortise right in the middle of the piece, that doesn't give you the opportunity to avoid these two mortises touching each other. But if you move it to the outside and bring it out here closer, I might even offset it off of my apron, meaning this is going to be my apron. I would maybe run my tenon here like this. So there was just a little shoulder on the outside, big one on the inside. Now when you put it together, you're moving your mortise farther out. And the farther out here you are, the farther in you can go before you run into this other one. I would, as a suggestion, I would prevent these two from touching. So I would stop it here and stop it there. Now you've got some connective material. But to make up for the lack of glue surface, you could come in here and you could pin with two dowels. You could put two in each one in each one, whatever, and those dowels would run all the way through into the cheek out here. Now what that's going to do is, you've got the glue to provide you with a chemical bond, but this is going to be the mechanical bond that's going to lock that thing in place. It doesn't have to be drawborn. That's too risky. You're going to break pieces if you do that. But after you've put it together, you then go in with your dowels, glue them in place, make sure they pass all the way through the tenon into the other cheek, not all the way out, but then that will go a long way to securing that. And it will compensate for the short tenon, which prevents you from having to hollow all of this material out. You got to really think about that stuff, because you can make the joint. You don't want the joint to end up being stronger than the surrounding wood. The joint stays together, but the stress breaks the leg. That's no good. You're no farther ahead. So, final thoughts on this. every time I do something like this, I feel like I want to go build it. I didn't take this quite as far as I would have liked, but I just wanted you to, I wanted more or less to put the idea in your head that try just designing with a piece of styrofoam full size. Then you don't have to try to imagine what it's going to look like if it was only a model. You can change it relatively easily. You can go in and do whatever you want. Use screws to hold it together. I was going to, if we had time, but it would hold me another episode, is start with a thicker top, leave it square, move the legs and the apron right out to the outside edge so that it was all flush all the way around. Now, it would be a completely different style, but I think it would work. Anyway, there's all kinds of opportunity. You got to start somewhere. Just play around with it. We never did get the time to go in there and cut that arc in there, but oh well. So much wood, so little time. Has everybody signed up? Where are we at, Megan? Did we hit 3,000? Are we giving away both? We did?
Someone donated $1,000.
So, final tally? Any more vets to say hi to? Anything from you, Frick?
Well, it's my birthday party. You must have forgot. Or it's my birthday tomorrow. You must have forgot. But
Well, it's tomorrow. I can't take away Bo's thunder.
he's not even here. He didn't even show up to his own party.
It's happy birthday to Frick tomorrow. He's going to be, you're 40 or 42?
Come on now.
41?
36.
36. Soon to be 40.
Ugh.
Happy birthday, Frick. He actually does a whole lot. In fact, I don't always like to admit it, but it was actually Frick's idea for me to start this whole thing. And it's been his genius when it comes to things of a technical nature that have enabled us to grow this to what it is today. And he's been a big supporter of Purple Heart. He volunteers his time to do this, so kudos to Frick. If I didn't already give him so much, I'd give him something else. But
He volunteers all of his labor, actually.
yes, he does. And he works seamlessly with Luther. He and the Colonel just
We got a system going now.
Hey,
they got a
you need
system.
to turn your computer to me.
All right. So, we're ready for the draw?
Are we?
What are we giving away first?
Let's give away our 3 dead cats.
Well, so we're at 3,900 right now.
We're at 3,900. If somebody wants to bump that up, I have to give away something else. What other tool am I about to lose?
All right. Let's give away a dead cat while you're thinking of that. First dead cat goes to Ken Anderson in North Carolina.
Congratulations, Ken. Make sure you let us just know your size.
Next dead cat is Don Erickson in Burlington, Washington.
Don, stay warm.
Number 3. George Whitehead in the UK.
Wait, what's this one?
What?
Did you do 3?
I did 3.
That's okay. George Whitehead in the UK is getting a dead cat.
Yeah.
Purple Heart dead cat. Purple dead cat, however you're going to say that. All right, so we're going to give away 3. The third one is going to be our custom-made IBC 1/8-inch chisels. I turned the handle for that myself. Nice piece of figured.
We're not going to give away that chisel.
Yes, we are.
No, I made that chisel.
No, I made that. Oh, you made
the
this?
big one, yeah. They can have one, but they're not having that one. That's the original.
So we'll put the handle that I made on an 1/8-inch chisel, so Jake can keep his. But you'll get
That I did.
oh right, yeah.
Somebody's not so generous.
Yeah. Still don't share his toys.
So are we giving?
Work on it, Megan.
We're giving that.
So the first draw will be for an 1/8-inch IBC chisel with Rob's turned figured maple handle.
All right. I already pressed the button, so I'm just going to scroll down and see who won.
Okay, who won it?
Winner is Don Flynn in South Australia.
Don. Great to have my chisel in Australia. Second one is going to be for the Fiddleback Maple.
Super Dave says, wow, Jake makes one thing in the shop and doesn't want to give it away.
He's saving it for Super Dave.
Okay. What is this?
The next one is Fiddleback Maple marking gauge.
It's going to
Mine.
Phil Greenwood in Suffolk, United Kingdom.
Phil?
Two UK winners.
Congratulations.
All right, last.
And the last one will be my this is a beautiful piece of bird's eye. My bird's eye maple dovetail saw. We'll box it up. I'll sign it somewhere and send it off to who?
Grand prize winner is Zared Schwaber in New York.
Schwaber.
Hey, an American. Good. Zared?
Zared, yeah.
Congratulations, Zared. Big win's yours. We're back in 2 weeks. We'll have a new topic for you. We'll announce it in about a week's time. Glad you joined us. Thank you for your generosity. Remember, look into the Purple Heart Project. Find out what it is so that you can help us spread the word. If you're a combat wounded vet, please apply. We don't know when our next class is going to be running, but the minute they open the border, we're on. Have a good night. Thanks for everyone that's helped us. See you.